I'm gonna pick it up from where we left off yesterday. Simin Tuf Reish Sadi Beis in the middle of Sif Aleph. The Ramah comments and says, "Ve'echad yochol levarach v'sheni koreh." One person is able to say the brachos on the Megillah, and the other person is able to read the Megillah. It's an interesting halacha. The Mishna Berura says, "Bein bebracha rishona, bein leinyan bracha achrona, bilvat sheyachavin, lo hitzi hashayim vehim yachavnu latzis." This applies to the brachos before the Megillah or after, as long as the person reciting the brachos has in mind to fulfill the obligations of those who are listening, and the listeners have in mind to fulfill their obligation with the bracha two-way streak. Shulchan Aruch says, "Ula'achreha no hagin levarach harav esrivenu." After the Megillah, the custom is to say harav esrivenu. Mishna Berura says, "Ki begamara isa de bracha de la'achreha tal yibib ben hagam b'makom sheno hagin levarach yevarach." The Gemara says that the bracha after the Megillah is dependent upon a custom. And a place where they have the custom to say such a bracha, they should say such a bracha. And that's why the Shulchan Aruch says that nowadays the custom is in fact to say this bracha. Harav esrivenu. Mishna Berura says in Hey, ve'in loimer hakel harav. Don't say hakel harav. Kivin shekvar zachar Hashem shamar Elokinu. Since you already mentioned Hashem's name when you said Elokinu, ve'yesh garsin hakel. Some of the text hakel. But Eli Rabba hechriya ke Shulchan Aruch she'in loimer. Eli Rabba holds like the Shulchan Aruch who says that you shouldn't say hakel. V'chini loimer baruch ata Hashem hakel hanifra rak baruch ata Hashem hanifra ein sham. Similarly, a person shouldn't say baruch ata Hashem hakel hanifra. Rather, you should say baruch ata Hashem hanifra. Shulchan Aruch continues and says, Im lo beirach lo lefanev lo la'achrei yatzaf. If a person didn't say the brachas before the Megillah or after, they would still nevertheless fulfill the obligation. The brachas before and after are actually not needed. You could still fulfill your obligation. Mishnah Berura and Vav says, the brachos in ma'achvos. The brachos are independent. In other words, you can still fulfill the mitzvah of Megillah even if you didn't say the brachos. Similar to most mitzvahs, pretty much every mitzvah that you could, unless the mitzvah itself is a bracha, that you could fulfill the mitzvah even though you didn't say the bracha, even though preferably you should perform that mitzvah with the brachas. It appears that if you remembered in the middle that you didn't say the bracha, you should make the bracha bein aprakim, between the chapters, the different chapters in the Megillah. So this is the idea of saying the brachas bein aprakim if you forgot, as long as you didn't finish the Megillah. If you already finished, you can't do it. Ramah says, "V'nahagu loimer b'layla asher haniya." Aval lo b'yom. The custom is at night to say asher haniya, but not during the day. It's printed in the Chumashim after Megillah Esther. Ve'in levarach achrei al b'tzibur. You should only say the bracha in the congregation after the Megillah. Mishnah Berura comments and says, "Zayin of alo b'yom dekvar amar piyutim," because you already said piyutim during the day, so then therefore you don't need to say asher haniya during the day. So there's a discussion of places who don't say the piyutim if they need to say it or not. Different opinions. See the Dirshu Mishnah Berura on that for more details. Mishnah Berura and Ches says, don't say the bracha after. Aval habracha shelafaneha l'kuli olma hayochid tzarich levarach. But the brachas beforehand, everyone agrees that an individual needs to say them. So the brachas before the Megillah, for sure you need to say it. The brachas after, not so simple. If you don't have a minyan, the bracha after you can't do, but before for sure you could do. However, if you look at the Be'er Halacha down over here in Dibar Maskala B'tzibor, the Be'er Halacha quotes an Ali Rabba who proves from other poskim that you would say the bracha even by yourself. The Be'er Halacha wants to say. And the Be'er Halacha continues over here and he says, look at the Be'er Hagrada from the Yerushalmi. It's not a proof. Nevertheless, you shouldn't say the bracha, because this bracha isn't even obligatory even with the congregation. It's dependent upon whether you have the custom to do so or not. So who could say that the custom is to say such a bracha individually, and therefore the Be'er Halacha concludes basically like the Pri Megadim who says Safek brachas lahakel should be lenient on a doubt of brachas and not recite such a bracha. The Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Berura.
Why is
Excuse me.
Why is it serious?
I just realized I think that we skipped the Mishnah Berura and Bays that we didn't do yesterday. This is going on Shechianu. According to the Shulchan Aruch, you don't say Shechianu on the Megillah again in the morning. So the Mishnah Berura comments the Hari Kvar Beirich Balayla because you already recited the bracha at night. The reason of the second opinion quoted by the Ramah, which we hold like, who says that we do say Shechianu again during the day of Megillah. The main mitzvah is during the day, and therefore you would say Shechianu again. Comes the Mishnah Berura Vayter, which we already saw this halacha in the Magen Avram, but now this is going to be a different conclusion. If the Baal Kari, the person who was reading the Megillah, stopped reading the Megillah, he fainted, something happened to him, and he could no longer continue. The opinion of the Achronim is that the second Baal Kari does not need to begin from the beginning of the Megillah. Rather, he could begin from the place where the first Baal Kori, person reading the Megillah, left off. This is obviously not going like the Magen Avram, which I'm sure he quotes in the Shara Tzion over here in Hey. The Magen Avram, right? The Loike Magen Avram. The Magen Avram was pretty adamant and gave a clear ruling that you would have to start all the way from the beginning. Mishnah Berura does not come out like that. He comes out with, like many other Achronim who argue on this Magen Avram, included is the Yabitz, Yaakov Memdin, and the Siddur, the Eliyarabba, the Shvus Yaakov, the Dagel Mervalva, and many other Gedolei Poskim, who they all say that you would have to start, that you would not have to start from the beginning, that you could pick up from where the first person left off. Certainly, you don't need to begin. You don't need to say the brachas again from before the Megillah because everyone already fulfilled their obligation, and it's a burden on the Tzibur, says the Mishnah Berura, based on the Shvus Yaakov, having to go back all the way to the beginning of the Megillah. Even the Magen Avram agreed that you wouldn't need to say the brachas beforehand.
It's going on the fact that to go all the way to the beginning.
Correct. The question on the brachas is if the second Baal Kori was in the minyan or not. I understand if he was in the minyan and he was following the whole time in the Megillah. So in that case, for sure, you don't need to say the brachas. But let's say he wasn't in that minyan. Hold on to that question that I just asked. The Oz V'Hadar Mishnah Berura, explaining this Mishnah Berura, they're quoting the Shvus Yaakov over here, and basically says, what are you burdening the congregation for, making them go all the way back? We'll discuss that more momentarily.
That though, when I guess when first brachas, the second brachas, Tzibur messes up, that's not happening.
No problem. What? Say again.
Yeah, no problem making the Shliach Tzibur go back to the Tzibur when it's the Shmona Esrei, right?
Yeah.
He messes up in the first two brachas.
That's because the whole Shmona Esrei is completely invalid. Over here, the Megillah isn't invalid. Which one? The first opinion, who says you have to go all the way back?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. It's invalid. It's just preferable to. Perhaps it requires more research. Okay, let's get out of this. Let's discuss this more. There's a very important Kaf HaChaim. It's the Chasam Sofer also on the Shulchan Aruch. Many quote on this particular halacha. Basically, Kaf HaChaim at the end of Sivkot Yud Aleph, when he quotes the back and forth and the different opinions on the specific case that we're discussing over here, says V'nira she'im lo yikarar aksas psukim eino marich tircha v'yaschel merosh. It appears that if someone only said a couple of psukim, let's say the Baal Kori only said a few psukim, and then he was unable to continue, that's not a big tircha to tzibur. So in that case, he should go back to the beginning. However, V'gam near the opposite. But if he's already almost done with the Megillah, you don't need to go all the way back. V'gam near the imroi v'tzibur maskimet she'asim. Also, what is tircha de tzibura? Tircha de tzibura doesn't just mean that the chazan over here is singing a lot and it's taking a long time to finish. That's not what it means. If you have a tzibur in which everyone in the tzibur has an 8-minute Shmona Esrei, so now the chazan waiting 8 minutes to start Chazar Sashatz, that's not tircha de tzibura. That's what the tzibur wants. So you have to, as they say, know your audience. So if that congregation, if that tzibur says, go back to the beginning, because we want to go halachically like the Magen Avram, we want to go and cover all opinions, and it's a very pious tzibur, so then for sure go back. There's no question you should go back. The only reason not to go back is because of the important idea of you don't want to waste people's time. But if this is what people want to do with their time, they want to fulfill mitzvahs as they should properly be fulfilled, then on the contrary, go back. V'leil Purim b'motzei Shabbos, and then he says something else which is incredibly insightful. Let's say you have Purim and it's on Sunday. So the fast was already Thursday, as we learned. In that case, you don't need to worry about burning the tzibur because no one's fasting. When everyone's fasting, everyone's hungry. It's incredibly pious to now go back to the beginning if this would happen. But it's not required based on the general halacha. Granted, Magen Avram would say so. Comes along the Kaf HaChaim and says, if this happened on Purim fell out on Sunday, so now you're reading the Megillah after Shabbos, the laning is Motzei Shabbos. So in that case, yeah, you should go back to the beginning of the Megillah, like the Magen Avram. You don't want people to be upset that now you're slicing and dicing the laning and you're splitting it up with two different people, which we're going to go back to more. Today. Imhu b'shar yamim. But if it's other days when the fast is very difficult, so then you could be lenient, like the ruling of Eliyahu and the Shus Yaakov, and believe and pick up from where the first person left off.
With the Kavachayim, if it happens in the daytime, well, you go back all the time.
Yeah.
Unless you consider
More reason.
fasting
Correct.
throughout the night.
Correct.
It means fasting in the morning.
If that's what the tzibur wants.
But we do take a vote.
You have to know your audience, yeah.
I mean, yeah, because
you probably could have someone stand up and say by a raise of hands who wants to go back. It's Sarach Megillah. Probably you could do such a thing. Regarding the halacha of saying Shechianu during the day or not, Kaf Chaim and Yud Gimel, others also relate this. Na'anara Pashti. Do whatever you want. There's different customs. All are legitimate. One other point before we close this Kaf Chaim. In the beginning, he says that it's good that you should have two people standing next to the Balkori, one from the right and one from the left, when the reading of the Megillah is done, similar to laning. Interesting idea. You see that now more than you used to. When I grew up, I remember in Haftorah, you never saw it. Now even you're seeing it Haftorah. Such a thing happens. Just to point out a few points. The question is about the Shechianu. I don't think that we saw this. It gets quoted all over the place. Why don't we say, excuse me, the question is on the text of the bracha of the Megillah. Why do we say Asheki Shem Zavet Sivanu al Mikra Megillah? Why don't we say Lishmoya Mikra Megillah? So I think, if I'm not mistaken, we touched upon this last year in some in Tafresh Pei Tes. The bracha by shofar is Lishmoa kol shofar, to listen to the shofar. So why don't we say that by Megillah? So the Avu Dram is quoted all over the place. This Avu Dram over here on Amud Reish Daled. And he says, shofar, you need to hear it. If you don't hear the shofar, you wouldn't fulfill your obligation. Even if it was an echo, it wouldn't be good. Unlike Megillah, if you have a person who is deaf, he still fulfills his obligation if he read it, so to say. So he's not a deaf mute, he's just deaf. Because the main idea is the kriya, is the reading. That's why Al Mikra Megillah. Another answer is OJ Shleimer. Let's say you would say Lishmaya. So now there's a doubt. Because Lishmaya is similar to Havana, as the Pasuk says in Bereshis Membeis Chaf Gimel. So you have to understand what you're listening to. Consequently, people who don't understand what it says in Megillah says, so they don't understand the Hebrew. So then they would run into an issue if the text of the bracha would be Lishmaya. Because then you would need to understand it.
But then we see there are a couple words nobody understands anyway.
Exactly, that's the point. Because the bracha is al mikra Megillah, you don't need to understand it. If it would have, don't get confused. If it would have been l'shmaya, then you would need to understand it. But since it's al mikra Megillah, consequently, one does not need to understand it. Shofar. How do we say l'shmaya shofar? How do you understand that? Very simple. It's any language you want. It's not a language, it's a sound. So therefore, you don't run into this issue. So these are a few clever answers as to the technical difference between the text of the shofar, which is the Shema Kol shofar, as opposed to Megillah, which is Mikra Megillah. The Aruch HaShulchan makes a few points over here. Number one, the congregation should answer Amen to the brachas that are being made before the Megillah. However, he should not say Baruch Hu Baruch Shema. And the simple reason behind this is because any time that a person isn't fulfilling his obligation with the mitzvah, any time a person is fulfilling his obligation with someone else reciting the bracha, and he's being yotze via the concept of Shemei Kona, listening is like answering, you don't say Baruch Hu Baruch Shema. He says that the custom is to say Shechianu during the day and don't change it. That's our custom, that's what we do. He also rules that in the case of if the Baal Kori couldn't continue with Megillah, you don't need to go back to the beginning, rather from the place where you left off. So it's also the ruling of the Aruch HaShulchan. The Piskei Teshuvos has actually a fair amount over here on this first sif. I went through all of it. We're going to just summarize some of the main points. I don't think it's worthwhile taking up everyone's time and going through these 6, 7 pages, whatever it is, even though there are some interesting things over there. One point is someone can't hear the Megillah during day and night. He doesn't have Megillah. So the Shaila is Shechianu, which we discussed. So there's different opinions if you could say Shechianu on the actual holiday or not. And Shas Nisim. At the end of the day, suffix Brachas Haka, we wouldn't. I think that ruling was already clear, based on what we learned in yesterday's session, that is basically how we came out, and that's how he rules over here as well.
Okay.
What?
He rules it that way.
Suffix Brachas Haka, and you wouldn't say the Shechianu Shas Nisim. You need the Megillah for that. The logic we discussed in depth yesterday, which I'm sure you remember. So whole discussion about saying Shechianu on Mashloach Manos Matanas L'Yonim, the Suda of the day, as we said. That's what you have in mind when you say the bracha on the Megillah. The Baal Kori has in mind, people have in mind to listen that it should cover all of those mitzvahs. The Magen Avram, which is the source of this, quoting the Shla, didn't say have in mind Matanos L'Yonim. Why not? So there's a few potential reasons that are given. I think the question is better than the answer, especially coupled with the fact that the Pri Megadim inserts Matanas L'Yonim, but removes what does he remove? Suda? I think he removes Suda, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he removes Suda. He doesn't say Suda. So I didn't see anyone addressing that nuance also in the Pri Megadim. But Moshe Sternbach, in the Shalosh Chuvas Van Huggles, he actually just turned 100. He got a letter from the King of England or something congratulating him. Apparently, that's the custom.
Is it England?
No, he's in Israel, but originally he's from England.
Oh wow.
I think so. So the idea over here is that he wants to suggest that excuse me. Excuse me. That it could be that the Magen Avram purposely left out Matanas L'Yonim because there was a concern that maybe the ani, someone poor, would come before laning of the day. Maybe he would come before laning of the day. And he's not going to want to give the poor person money, food, Matanas L'Yonim, because he didn't say Shechianu yet on the Megillah. And therefore, maybe it's not covered, so to say. Therefore, that's why I want to suggest that it was enacted to be said. That's why the Magen Avram didn't say Matanas L'Yonim, perhaps. Chuvas Van Huggles Chilik, Aleph Siman Taf Daled, quotes other sources down here also. The problem with that approach is that maybe you should fulfill the mitzvah of Matanas L'Yonim before davening. So obviously we're not learning the halachas of Matanas L'Yonim right now. It's coming up as a tangent. But when we learn Matanos Yonim, we're gonna have to keep our eyes open for this. When should you fulfill the mitzvah? Many people give money before, also because there's enough going on Purim to be distributed on Purim itself that they have it in advance. So this does require more research. Over here, you have a poor person who comes and needs it right now. Don't tell him, can't do it because you might not never see him again. You might not get that opportunity. However, many poskim mention explicitly that the Shechianu should cover, like we saw in the Prima Gada Matanas Evyonim. And therefore, you should be careful. Certainly, if you find a poor person before davening and request Matanas Evyonim, you should give it to him. You should definitely give it to him.
Yeah, with these people, coming during davening,
Yeah.
supposed to be, middle of Shema, whatever.
Yeah, that's another discussion about giving someone poor during davening. We covered that topic in Hilchos Kriyat Shema in Siman Samach Beis in depth, actually, many, many years ago, and gave a whole elaboration. And I also gave a negative shout out to the Dersha Mishna Berura, how they did not do a good presentation on that specific halacha of giving money during Shema. They did not quote. They quoted like one opinion, but it's there's a lot of opinions, and they did not do a good job, according to my humble opinion. But that's another discussion in of itself. But this is referring to before davening, let's say. You should definitely give. And you could give again after davening, so then your shechianu will have covered Matanas Lavyonim. You could triple dip, so to say. Double dip. So that's the idea over here. There's a major discussion about an ovel, which we learned yesterday. Someone who is in a period of mourning. It seemed like from the Mishnah Berura that it seemed like he could read the Megillah. Just someone else says the brachos. He could still read the Megillah. However, others say that no, the person who is reading the Megillah should also preferably say the bracha, say the brachos, beforehand. And therefore, it will be best for the Avel not to read the Megillah at all. At all. However, if he's been reading from Megillah many, many, many years, he's been doing it. He's the best one over there. Certainly, if he's the best one there, he has the most expertise. He's the best Baal Koreh over there. He's an important person, etc. He could read the Megillah, even lechatchila. Preferably, he could read it over there. Many poskim hold. Some poskim hold. He wants to say many that he could even say the brachos. I think that's very controversial. That he could say the brachos. The Mishnah Berura definitely didn't suggest this as a possibility. So I think that's a controversial psak. I think that's controversial. But what we do see over here also, it's a whole discussion. Ein avelos before hesed maybe doesn't apply on Purim, but actually I don't want to jump ahead. From this next halacha of the guy the Baal Koreh, who is unable to continue laning, from this halacha, we see an idea of the person who should lane. Excuse me, how you don't want to split up the people who are laning Megillah. That's what you see. You don't want to split up the laning of the Megillah. You don't want to do it to multiple people. I think yesterday's session that you asked that. So here's your answer. You don't want to split up. That's what we see from this.
Where is he bringing it down from?
I mean, I think you have footnote 51 over here. You know, I think it's based on this halacha, which there's some opinions that you need to go back to the beginning.
So what was that like? Could I just see the language again? Just the
We're back up.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're
We're over here. Oh, this we didn't see yet. However, the next paragraph. Some say that Onam yesh koishim sheim malkom hachmer. Al kashazeh shem hachmer v'bal kori lo ikivim l'seisi di chavasa b'kriyas yish. And this is what we alluded to before. Some say that no. You only need to be stringent on this when you're going to switch the bal kore, and now the second person who's going to lean didn't hear it from the beginning. For example, he wasn't there. But if he was there and he listened carefully to every single word and had in mind to fulfill his obligation, he could even go up and switch it. Some want to say that. Some want to say.
And how do we get that from the Magen Avraham again that you shouldn't?
Well, the Magen Avraham, remember, he held if you have a second guy who's coming up there, the lane, you have to go all the way back to the beginning.
But that's because you didn't know the first guy was going to faint. Here, like you had.
So what? And who said? I'm just talking. Who said that Magen Avraham that he's not referring to when the second Balkori was there? And still he said that halacha.
I'm just saying it's a totally different.
What's the difference if you knew before or not? What's the difference? Tell me halachically. Give me a halachic proof. Give me a right. What's the difference if you knew before?
We know that in Shmona Esrei, right?
Yeah.
If somebody blanks out during davening,
Yeah.
another shliach could come up there, right? And take his place from where he left off.
I don't know about that. What simon is that in?
After listen Tzadi, I don't know.
No, definitely, it's definitely later than that. I don't know about that. Could some in Nun Gimel or Kuf something?
That was in the Shmona Esrei.
I don't know if he could just pick that up like that, especially if it isn't fulfilling his obligation. But it's a little cryptic in the Magen Avraham because maybe he wasn't even referring to such a case, and he had in mind to fulfill his obligation, and still he says, go back to the beginning.
So most posts can hold that one should not be maflik balakura. That a fair statement, or
I'll be honest, I didn't spend more than 4 minutes researching this topic. I'm just reading over here the highlights of the information that he's presenting, and it seems like there's two different opinions.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It did happen. What?
It happened to me that 1 year where I lane.
Yeah.
You had this bar mitzvah boy who wanted to lane a para.
Okay, it seems like Yotze B'diavad.
B'diavad for sure.
Seems like from this first opinion, it's not preferable to.
Not so
but the second opinion is that if he fulfills the obligation, then it could be done, such a thing.
Yeah, he was there to fulfill his obligation.
Right.
But still, it's obvious it's an Indian.
It says over here in footnote 53, you found some Gedolim who did this when they were older. But it's correct that you shouldn't do it. Yeah. They darshan Torah Hashem Tamima. It should be Tamimas, complete. Yeah, they darshan such a thing. I saw that somewhere.
I think it's all one bracha. It's all the one.
Yeah.
Obviously, Balkore, we don't have this thing, but it's not the similar case because there it's, you have different brachas, it breaks everything up.
Right, on the Torah. I think even when leaning Torah, I think even it's brought down such a thing.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Really?
Yeah. Like mina muvchar lechatchila. I think so. But we'll have to see when we learn those halachos, obviously. Yeah. But I think, I mean, we clearly see from over here that there's definitely an idea, preferably not to do so. Yeah. So these are basically is basically everything that's there. We have an extra few minutes. We're obviously not going to start the next sif now. I'll just share one interesting thing that he said in the beginning. He's talking about over here if there's an idea of everyone saying the brachas before the Megillah on their own.
In a tzibur?
Yeah, you don't hear such a shaila even brought down
Right.
because we don't see it and no one even
Nobody
thinks
does
about it
it, right.
as potentially doing it. There's no havamina for it. But the Yisoid V'Sharish Avoida says the brachas of the Megillah, it's better for everyone to say them individually. Because a lot of times about Korah, he's like singing it, and because of that, people they're not really focusing on it properly, and it's better that everyone should do it themselves. Yeah, he's going to address that issue. The Rovam Hadras Melch you could have, but if you're not paying attention and listening, so what's all the Hadras? What's all the Rovam going to do you? There's no Hadras Melch, it's just Rovam. So therefore, says the Shir Avoda, it's better for everyone to do it individually. Yeah, and he says you want to finish the bracha when the chazan is doing it, and then you could even answer Amen. I've never seen this. However, some say that if you're saying it yourself, then you shouldn't answer Amen over the chazan, since you're not having in mind to fulfill your obligation with the bracha of the Baal Koreh, and therefore the answering Amen constitutes as an interruption between the recitation of the bracha and the reading of the Megillah. However, what you could do is you could say the bracha silently, word for word, with the chazan, and then there's not going to be concern of a bracha shein esricha. However, that's only if you have a Megillah that is kosher in front of you. Even so, in places that there's no concern that you will not hear the brachas properly, it's better not to say the bracha yourself. Listen from the Baal Koreh, because everyone agrees that you will fulfill your obligation this way, and that's pretty much why we never heard of this. Because this is most places, it's in an environment that's conducive. The bracha is being said normally, but this I think is a fascinating Yesod v'Sharish Avoda. And I have a mental note. I got to go through the Sefer Yesod v'Sharish Avoda cover to cover. It's such a source. It's such a source. There's so much insight and so much musar packed in there and halacha. It's just a tremendous sefer. Okay, so Mir Hashem, tomorrow we will continue with Sif A's. Yeah, have a good day.